Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my guide for the boss of the final Coil of Bahamut Turn 1, Imdugud. This guide is a collaboration between myself and the free company Death and Taxes. Before fighting this boss, you must first have cleared the second Coil of Bahamut Turn 4, and I recommend an average item level of 110. Imdugud has a total of 5 phases, 3 phases fighting against him, and 2 major add phases. If you would like to skip to a specific phase in this guide, please click that phase on the screen right now, or use the index in the top left of the video at any time. Additionally, I've also included Imdugud's exact ability rotation in a Google document in the description of the video. Before engaging Imdugud, look at the arena you're standing on. You'll notice it is broken up into several rings. As the fight progresses, each ring will slowly begin to be covered in an electrical field, dealing about 1000 damage every 3 seconds if you stand on it. This acts as the enrage for the encounter. After 10 minutes and 30 seconds, the entire arena will be covered, and avoiding this extra damage will become impossible. To help deal with the gradually shrinking arena, I recommend taking Imdugud facing directly north, with the tank standing within the innermost circle. This allows for easy repositioning after Imdugud's mechanics and keeps everyone familiar with their positions going into the final phase. Phase 1 will last from 100% until 85% of Imdugud's HP. In this phase, there are 2 major mechanics you have to deal with on top of his normal attacks. Imdugud himself has 3 different attacks he likes to use. The first is Critical Rip, which can be seen being casted by Imdugud before it hits. When the cast bar finishes, he will deal extremely high amounts of damage to the tank. I recommend having a cooldown available, plus Stone Skin and Eloquium on the tank before the strike hits. Imdugud also has 2 Conal Attacks. The first one is Crackle Hiss, which deals damage in a huge area in front of the boss. The cone is extremely long, reaching people on the opposite sides of the arena, as well as unusually wide, so you better be careful if you're standing too close to his front. It might clip you. His other Conal attack is Spike Flail, a rear Conal attack that will be triggered when someone steps behind him and the ability is off cooldown. If it lands, it deals high damage and places a strong bleed effect on the player. It's best for everyone to avoid getting hit by it, but a DPS or the off tank should attempt to trigger the attack as often as possible to help reduce tank damage. He won't use this attack when charging up certain other attacks, like Wild Charge, Cyclonic Chaos, or Heat Lightning. The first major mechanic of the fight itself will be Prey. Every so often, Imdugud will place a red marker above a single player's head, marking them with the debuff Prey. After 6 seconds, the debuff will expire and do a few hundred damage to the player and inflict them with Erratic Blaster. When Erratic Blaster wears off, the player will take about 6000 damage and be afflicted with a very potent paralysis, making it difficult to move or act. In order to prevent this, the initial Prey debuff must not deal any damage. You'll want to assign your healers to watch people for the Prey debuffs and have them Stone Skin or Eloquium them before it wears off to prevent the damage. Keep in mind that the current tank cannot be targeted by this attack. Imdugud's final mechanic for this phase and most of the fight is Wild Charge. When he performs this attack, he will mark someone other than the 2 tanks with a blue mark. After a short delay, he will fire an electrical blast at them, stunning and inflicting vulnerability up on them and anyone nearby them. Simultaneously, he will drop a large electrical field under his current location that deals about 3000 damage every few seconds if you stand in it. Finally, he will begin casting Wild Charge on the initially marked target. When it finishes casting, he will charge in that player's direction, dealing massive damage split between everyone hit by the attack as well as knocking them back. In order to counter the damage from Wild Charge, you will need at least 3 players standing between Imdugud and the stunned target. Additionally, the first target Imdugud hits needs to be a tank, as the first person hit by the charge will take significantly more damage than subsequent players. In the first phase, everyone other than the main tank can take the hit, with the off tank being first in line. While this won't work in the later phases, it does help prepare everyone for dealing with the mechanic. As you get more experienced, assigned players can simply block the charge. I recommend whichever player is marked for Wild Charge run towards the middle back of the inner circle where you are fighting him and ensure no other players are standing there when the mark goes out. The tank taking Wild Charge should also get a Stone Skin or Eloquium to help reduce the damage if possible. Warriors can also Inner Beast to help reduce the damage even more without sacrificing big cooldowns. After charging to the stunned player, Imdugud will turn and immediately Crackle Hiss the current tank, so he needs to remain facing away from the groups, and any melee or other players that were in that direction need to move with Imdugud's charge to prevent being hit by the hiss. If it's available to him, he can also attempt to spike flail anyone behind him. Watch out for these two cones as Imdugud is repositioned. If your tank positioned Imdugud correctly, he will run directly back on top of the electrical AoE field he dropped before the charge, and the melee can still hit him without touching the circle. You'll have to deal with these mechanics I just went over for the first 15% of Imdugud's HP. At 85%, Imdugud will stop attacking, use Electro Charge, and enter his first add phase. Electro Charge acts as a DPS check, as Imdugud becomes invincible as he slowly gains stacks of Electric Charge while you kill the adds. When the phase is finished, he will expend these stacks using Electric Burst and deal raid-wide damage, doing more damage for each stack of Electric Charge he has. He also gains extra stacks whenever he kills someone with Wild Charge or hits them with Erratic Blaster in the first phase, which makes performing these mechanics in Phase 1 very important. As soon as the phase begins, Imdugud will summon 4 adds, 2 sons of Imdugud and 2 daughters of Imdugud. A son plus daughter will appear on both the east and west inner sides of the arena. If 2 sons or daughters are ever next to each other, they will gain a massive buff that increases their damage dealt, likely wiping you. Each of the boss's children retains attacks that Imdugud himself uses. The daughters of Imdugud can each target a single player with prey, meaning that while both daughters are alive, 2 players will be targeted by this attack. His sons instead use Crackle Hiss, meaning that the tanks have to position them facing perpendicular to the raid. And both children use Spike Flail, so tanks need to try and prevent their tails from facing the raid as well. I recommend something like this for tanking the adds in order to avoid Spike Flails and Crackle Hisses from hitting the raid or the other tank. This is not the only positioning possible, so feel free to explore positions that your tanks are comfortable with. Sons also drop a damaging AoE similar to the one Imdugud uses with Wild Charge when they die, so avoid standing in it. It will dissipate after some time. As for kill order, I recommend killing your main tank's daughter and then their son, before switching to the off tank's daughter and son. Summoners and bards feel free to multi-dot here. Once all 4 adds are dead, you'll be able to damage Imdugud again, but he will continue to charge up. After you deal about 5% of his HP worth of damage, he will finally stop charging, perform Electric Burst, and transition into Phase 2. Phase 2 will last until Imdugud hits 55% and is largely similar to Phase 1. Prey, Critical Rip, Crackle Hiss, Spike Flail, and Wild Charge are all present. However, Imdugud will now also use the attack Heat Lightning. This attack will target 3 random raid members other than the main tank, deal a few thousand damage in a small area around them, and inflict anyone hit with vulnerability up. For this reason, every player needs to be loosely spread out to ensure you don't overlap lightnings. Referring back to this tanking image at the start of the guide, you can also use it to position players around the arena. Again, Imdugud won't Spike Flail while using Heat Lightning, so the area behind him is safe. However, he can immediately flail after, so take care. The first time he uses this ability, it will be on its own. The second time he uses it, he will also mark a player for Wild Charge at the same time. This means the marked player has to get into position while ensuring not to be hit by Heat Lightning. Any player hit by Heat Lightning will also be unable to assist in splitting the damage for Wild Charge, so players need to quickly notice whether or not they were hit by it. If you were hit by Heat Lightning, you do not help with Wild Charge. If you were not hit by Heat Lightning, you'll be helping split the damage for Wild Charge. Keep in mind Heat Lightning can target the off tank, meaning that they will become unable to help with the charge. If this happens, the tanks must immediately do a tank swap, and the main tank must rotate around and be hit by the Wild Charge. After bringing Imdugud down to 55%, he will use Electro Charge again and enter his second add phase. The second add phase is almost identical to the first. 2 sons and 2 daughters will again spawn in the same locations and can be tanked similarly as well. The only difference is that after 35 seconds, another set of children will spawn. The daughter will spawn at the south side of the inner circle and the son at the north side. To deal with this super tight DPS check, I recommend having a Black Mage or Summoner use their LB3 to hit all 4 of the initial adds that spawn, meaning that tanks need to keep the adds pretty close to the inner circle to ensure it can hit all of them. At this point, you have a choice. You can either kill both adds on a single tank and have that tank pick up both of the new ones, or kill one daughter from one tank and a son from the other and have them pick up the new son and daughter depending on which of theirs was killed. I personally recommend killing one son and one daughter from each, as it makes picking up the new adds much simpler and reduces the risk of hitting the raid with a Crackle Hiss or Spike Flail. Finish killing off the ads however your raid best sees fit, and push Imdugud down 5% more to force him to use Electric Burst and into his final phase. Imdugud's final phase will last until he is dead, and is largely similar to phases 1 and 2. He will still use all of his previous abilities from these phases, but he will gain access to a new one, Cyclonic Chaos. When Imdugud uses Cyclonic Chaos, a single player will be tethered to him. When the tether expires, he will hit them with Cyclonic Chaos, dealing a very large amount of damage split between all the players hit, knocking them away and inflicting them all with vulnerability up. For this attack, at least 3 people, including the tethered target, must be hit by it to ensure no casualties, so the tethered target plus 2 more people. Having 4 people helps, but it isn't 100% necessary. The first time Imdugud uses Cyclonic Chaos, it will be with Heat Lightning, meaning that again, players must quickly pay attention to whether or not they are hit by the attack and react. If you are hit by Heat Lightning, you will not help split the damage with Cyclonic Chaos. If you are not hit by Heat Lightning, you must quickly stand next to the tethered target to help split the damage. The tethered target should run right behind Imdugud to ensure that they are easy to reach for the whole party. If you feel you cannot safely get there while avoiding Heat Lightning, you too should rush to the center right after it occurs along with anyone splitting the damage. After the first Lightning plus Chaos, Imdugud will randomly choose between 2 possible combinations of attacks after casting Prey on a player. He will either do Heat Lightning plus Wild Charge, which you should already be experienced with and we shall call Combo 1, or he will do Cyclonic Chaos plus Wild Charge, which we shall call Combo 2. When this happens, the raid should have each target position as seen in this chart. The Cyclonic Chaos target will be directly behind the boss, while the Wild Charge target will be farther back behind the boss. This allows both targets to be a safe distance from the raid and each other, have players split the damage for Cyclonic Chaos, and then have the remaining players help eat the Wild Charge. For combo number 2, you'll want to break people into 2 groups, the Cyclone group and the Wild Charge group. For the most part, it doesn't matter who is in each group, but the off tank should definitely be in the Wild Charge group. Each group will be responsible for dealing with splitting the damage for their assigned mechanic. However, you may run into a situation where someone from the Cyclone group is targeted by Wild Charge or vice versa. For this situation, you must assign players to be flexible within the groups, able to cover either group if they need an extra body. There are many different ways to go about this, but I recommend a priority system similar to how you would deal with ballistic missiles in turn 8. There is also the possibility that the off tank will be targeted for Cyclonic Chaos, and similar to with Heat Lightning plus Wild Charge, this can force a tank swap. Keep in mind that failure to execute mechanics in the last phase comes with an extremely punishing rebuttal from Imdugud. If a player is ever hit with Erratic Blaster from the Prey debuff, or if any player dies to one of his mechanics, Imdugud will gain a stack of Electric Charge and counter with Electric Burst, which if he happens to kill multiple people at the same time, can deal massive damage as well as decreasing everyone's lightning resistance. He also gains a stacking damage buff equivalent to the number of Electric Charge stacks he just used, which makes recovering harder and harder for each person who dies. Also remember that as you approach the end of this fight, the circle will shrink down to just the very inner circle, so positioning is very key. The players knocked back by Wild Charge will most likely eat a single tick of electrical field, so the use of Virus, Sacred Soils, and Suckers helps ensure people will survive. Once you are able to overcome this, all there is left is to finish off Imdugud. This fight is very much about being able to quickly react to Heat Lightning, Cyclonic Chaos, and Wild Charge, while also meeting the DPS check. If you can overcome these issues, the fight should go fairly smoothly, and you'll be ready to move on to the final Coil of Bahamut Turn 2. But anyway guys, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share for more Final Fantasy XIV news, information, guides, whatever. And until next time guys, take care.